Okay, so I told you guys that we were going to be doing some of this and some of that with diesels, right? Now, let's see. It's part of the EGR. It's tough to see. Right down next to the EGR, right here, okay, that right there is the fluid injector, the HC injector for the regeneration. Okay, see that tube that goes out to the left underneath that, which is an EGR valve of sorts, right? So that right there, that little tube going out to the left, is what takes the fuel down to the exhaust. Okay, now we'll have a more thorough I guess lecture slash informational lecture. I just said that. Well, anyway, we're gonna have a more thorough explanation of how that works. How's that? That works good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and connect the scanner and the truck. This is my truck, 2013 Duramax. What we're gonna do is, it's already in a regeneration mode. So we're just gonna go ahead and tell it to complete the regen as a service regen. So I'll show you how to do that. So we'll start with this. Okay, Tech 2 Diagnostics, 2013 truck, GMC. It's a 2 truck, it's a Sierra powertrain, big diesel. No, it does not have a, yes, it does have a manual transfer case right there. See, it's a 3-button. That means you pick it. But what they're asking for is, does it have a pull stick on the transfer case? The answer is no. It's shifted. So we're going to go to ECM. We're going to go to special functions. We're going to go to output control. Service regeneration is where we're going to want to be. Okay. So it says tailpipe exhaust outlet temp will be greater than 572 degrees Fahrenheit during service regeneration. That means the actual, after the venturi that we talked about on the end of the tailpipe, it's still going to be 600 degrees. Okay. Now this is going to take probably 35 or 40 minutes, right? That's usually how this works. So open the hood, which you can see that I've done, right? And then make sure that there's plenty of air in front of it, away from walls or buildings, which I'm parked directly between the sheds, so we're in pretty good shape there. So you can interrupt it by switching off the ignition, depressing the brake pedal, or disconnecting the scan tool. So check the oil level and the coolant level before you start and after you're done. So there are a couple reasons you open the hood. It's partly to get rid of the heat. It's also so that the power steering pump doesn't get so hot that it yaks power steering everywhere. So let's see, you can damage things if you're screwing around with it. Don't initiate service mode if non-DPF faults are present on the vehicle. And you may need to change the oil after running the service mode, which I actually do plan to do. So we're gonna press enter. Okay, don't leave it unattended. Apply the parking brake, start the engine, put it in park or neutral. Could take up to 20 minutes. My expectation is it's gonna take 30 to 40. But you never know. Okay, test completed when engine idle returns to normal. So the biggest thing I want you guys to get out of this, we're gonna go ahead and start it now, is the fact that if we don't hit 1100 degrees, then this doesn't happen. But I want you guys to go ahead and see that. So we're gonna go ahead and turn that on. Okay, you can already see that we have EGT 1, 2, 3, 4, right, on the screen, and they're already hot. I've driven the truck 3 miles and it's already worked on elevating the temperature from my house to here, because it was trying to go into active regen driving down the road anyway. So, as you can see, sensor 1 is before the catalytic converter. Sensor 2 is after the catalytic converter. Sensor 3 is where it comes out of the SCR, and sensor 4 is where it enters the DPF, if I recall correctly. Anyway, I'll pull up the service information on that and let you know for certain. So at any rate, so there you go. So we're running the engine up, right, and we're adding fuel, and that's why we're getting the cat lit there on the first sensor. Okay. And actually, thinking about it, that might be wrong. Sensor 1 is at the back of the turbo. Sensor 2 is at the inlet to the DOC. Sensor 3 is at the inlet to the SCR. And sensor 4 is at the inlet to DPF. All right, now we got it. Okay, so the fuel injector right now is inactive. We're warming everything up just with the engine right now, okay? So that will become active here shortly, and then sensor 3 and sensor 4 are going to go for a big ride. Okay, so let's see, let's flip through here. Okay, so particulate filter pressure. This right here, this is your pressure sensor, okay, right here. That shows your difference in pressure before and after the DPF, okay? So that's 0.6 psi, all right? We have calculated it at 42 grams of soot, okay? So it's ready to do the DPF regen for soot accumulation, okay? So that's why it was trying to run it before anyway. All right, so the engine runtime since last, let's see what that is. Since last DPF was 7.43 hours. Now what that means is the engine has run about 8 hours since the last time we did a regen. We've used 15.8 gallons of fuel since the last DPF regen, and it's been 36 miles, whatever. We have completed 124 regenerations total. Okay, so here's your NOx generation, right? So your concentration is 13.82%, that's your O2 concentration, and your NOx concentration is 99 parts per million before the SCR and 67 parts per million after, okay? Running the engine at 2,000 RPM, ECT is at 177, MAF is at 85 grams. APP, of course, indicates nothing because the accelerator is not being touched. The scan tool is commanding all of this to happen. Map and baro pretty much match, which is good. That means there's not really any restriction in the intake airstream, right? So that's good news. Main injection and pilot injection are both working. Post-injection is active. See that right there? Post-injection is active. So there's that. And then fuel tank levels 38%. If you run the fuel too low, then it won't run the test. It'll just say there's not enough fuel in the tank. If you don't have a quarter of a tank, it won't run the test because it might run out. There's your 5-volt reference circuits. Mail requested. No, we don't have any DTCs, and our engine runtime is about 5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to page back here a little bit. Okay, we're still inactive on the after treatment injector, but the reason that I'm going to say that probably is that engine temperature is not high enough. Does that make sense? Engine temperature was at 177 when we paged through that. Now it's talking about post-injection. So post-injection has to do with smoothing that engine noise out. All right, now we just wait a little bit. We watch the screen and we see what happens. It's terribly exciting. This is usually where having the extra scanner is really helpful. That's something I discovered is that I could take one of my scanners and put it on a truck and start doing a DPF regen while I took the other scanner and did something else with it. So I mean, if you have two scanners at work and you can snag them both, you're good to go. Or if you have your own and you manage to borrow a work scanner, that works out too, etc., etc. Alright, so that's the front of the data list. So let's go back here for a second. Oh, it's winding up now, you can hear it. Okay. There's your NOx concentration, right? So your NOx concentration is 119 parts per million going in, and it's 15 parts per million coming out. That means that the DEF injection is working, right? Yep, now we're wound up to 2500, and our engine coolant sensor is only at 179 degrees, so it's trying to get that engine coolant up where it wants it before it really starts running this test. The MAF's up at 120 grams per second. Engine load is 28% because it's running the fan at extremely high speed. Idle airflow valve positions at 55%. Now, why do we want it at 55%? We want to cut down some of the air that's coming in so we can warm up the engine more quickly. Okay? And as you can see, our MAP sensor is starting to read just a little bit of boost, isn't it? Okay, main, pilot, and post injections are all working. Fuel level's the same. All that stuff looks good. So we're really just waiting for this ECT to come up to the point where it's going to run the test. There we go. Now you can see here the after treatment fuel injection is active. And now we're at almost 1100 degrees, sensor 2, and that's where it comes out of the catalytic converter. Does that make sense? And now we're watching ECT 3 come up. That's at almost 1000 degrees. And EGT sensor 4 is coming up. It's almost at 900 degrees. So we're just about ready to start burning off that soot, aren't we? This is one of the other reasons I do this outside, is because it's so damn loud. You could do it inside, but it generates an awful lot of exhaust, especially at 2500 RPM, and the fact that it's effectively running it rich. And I say it's running it rich because we're working the living heck out of that cat. So there you go. So let's see, this is out of the turbo, this is out of the cat, that's out of the SCR, and that should be out of the DPF. And as you can see, you know, we keep putting in a whole bunch of fuel. That exhaust after treatment fuel injector active, we're dumping fuel into the exhaust on top of that cat to heat that sucker up, to make sure we heat up the whole rest of the system. And I was interested to try this because the one of the seminars that I went to, it was 6 months ago or so, I went to the diesel presentation, and I was listening to the guy, and he runs a diesel shop, and this was one of those. Remember we talked about the what is it, the EPR, that stuff you put in the crankcase and then you run it. It's the engine flush, and the guy was saying that what he had was he had a giant over-the-road truck with, you know, 750,000 miles or something on it, and it had low compression. And they ran that stuff through it at every oil change, and the truck just started running better and better and better and better because the rings were sludged up. So at any rate, what he said that they were doing was they were doing a regen, and then they were doing an oil change right after that, and the trucks actually picked up 1 or 2 miles a gallon. So I thought it would be interesting to try that on my own. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So now you can see that everything's up at 1,000 degrees, right? We're going to run over here, and you can see the soot mass has fallen to 38 grams, hasn't it? So we've already burned off 4 grams worth of soot mass. So, and I know that this particulate filter pressure is higher than it was before. It was 0.6, now it's 1.3, and part of that is because we have a giant fire going on in there, and we're burning off that soot into ash. And see, you see we just dropped another gram on the soot mass. So what the thought is with this whole process, since we're doing it on purpose instead of just letting the truck do it, you know what I mean? The thought is that if we do a service regeneration, maybe we get a better burn off than we do just driving down the road. So that's kind of the thought on this whole thing. But essentially, unless you're hitting 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit in that exhaust, you're not burning any of this soot off. You're only adding to it. So they've had issues with this HC injector, and they actually have a special policy out now on it, as I recall. We're down to 35 grams. Just keeps cooking. Once you get it going, once you get this process going, it cooks it out pretty quickly. So hopefully it won't be more than 20 minutes, which is what it said, but I've seen it take 45. It just depends too on how much soot you have in there. Like we only had 40 grams in there. I've had trucks show up with 60 to 80 grams, and after 1 or 2 regens, they still have a little bit, and sometimes you have to run a third. And they say above 80, don't even bother, because you're just going to set the truck on fire. So I found that interesting. The other reason for this here too is we were at 2,000 RPM, and now we're at 2,500. So the more you increase the speed of the engine, the faster it has to pump air, right? Or exhaust after you've burned something, right? So if that's the case, trying to push more air through a blockage will tell you that that it's going to raise the pressure, won't it? Right? The harder you pump against a restriction, the more pressure you generate. But you can see that it gets up to 1,100 degrees coming out of the cat, and it's pretty steady at 1,000 degrees all the way down the back of the truck. And that's what we need. If we can't hit 1,000 degrees, then this soot mass here doesn't change. So if that doesn't change, that's bad news. See, and we're down to 1.2 psi from 1.3, aren't we? So that's an indication that we're getting rid of the soot mass right here. That's the thing about modern trucks. Because of the DPF, they don't need a muffler, so they don't have one. All they have is emissions equipment, from the downpipe to the back of the truck. That's it. They have the diesel oxidation catalyst, and then after that they have the selective catalyst reducer, which is what gets rid of the NOx, and then after that they have the DPF, the diesel particulate filter, which filters out all of the soot and the particulates, and then now we have to do the regen to go ahead and burn all that stuff out. So that's the thought. So there you go, down to 1.31 volts here on the differential pressure sensor, and then the soot mass is down to 31. So it's going, one little bit at a time. Down to 30. And I've had too, you can see the after treatment fuel injector, right? The after treatment fuel injector is the HC injector, the hydrocarbon injector that just dumps fuel on top of the cat, right? So if that's what's dumping fuel on top of the cat and it's only on 30%, that's our duty cycle, right? So if it's only on 30%, we can drop a lot more fuel on that cat, but we don't need to. See, because we're getting to our 1100 degrees right here. So the whole key to this is it's going to get hotter than the blazes of hell under there, and it's going to be hot as hell out the tailpipe. So make sure nothing's behind you. Don't park next to anything. Don't let people walk through there. Of course, it doesn't help when you cone the place off and the freaking salesmen walk right through anyway. I've had that happen I don't know how many times. I've had them walk up, I'm in full PPE gear with high voltage gloves on. They come walking through the cones that I've roped off to ask me a question. They're nice people, but they're kind of pinheads. I sure hope you guys are doing well. I really do. I love you and I worry about you. I haven't been back on the computer on the school's website since Saturday morning, I think. So I don't know who's laid off and who's not, but I sure hope you're not. That's no damn good, especially when you're trying to support yourself. Well, there we go. We're down to 27 grams. Burning, 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 turning and burning. So yeah, there you go. We're still only at 30% duty cycle on that fuel injector. So that's all we need. That's all we need to heat the living crap out of that cat. That cat's all the way up to 1100 degrees. They get it up to 1000 pretty quickly, and then as you'll notice, they do take it up to 1100 or a little above, but it's very slow once it hits 1000. And I believe that one of the biggest reasons, well, actually they didn't really take it up that fast either, if you think about it, because we had to wait for the truck. Hang on just a minute.